Snap action. Action!
And welcome to Morning Minutes with myself, Michael Bergio, and Mark Novak. This bright, sunny morning, we're going to be talking about due diligence. What is it? Have you ever heard of it? How does it apply to property? Does it apply to property? Mark, what is it?
Oh, look, effectively, we do due diligence with everything every time we purchase, but the big end of town call it DD.
Yep.
Always the big end of town have special words for stuff. So normally people would call checking it out, or I'll get to the bottom of it. The big end of town, when they're purchasing a big property, they go through a DD period.
And I think, just like in everything in life, you always sort of look through it and do your own sort of assessment on it. But I find, like you said, the big end of town, and what we mean by that is generally development sites. We get a lot of it in commercial, and what that can apply to a development site is checking the land soils, checking with council, basically just like research on a property. So, Mark, good morning, Amal. Hope you're well. How does that apply? Like, when should it be used, and probably when shouldn't it be used?
Oh, Amal's getting 1,000 units in her area. Congratulations, Amal.
I saw that $1 billion development, 4 towers, I think it is. That's huge.
That's huge.
More.
The northwest area. So I get, look, DD, I think when there's sort of more uncertainty than people may think with sites or properties, when there's an upshot that on the property that has to be explored, and potentially the developer is going to pay more because of that upshot, the developer who's purchasing the property wants to do his research but doesn't want to compete with the market. So there's, to take it to the next level, there's a thing called exclusive DD. So what happens is a seller will contract to the purchaser for a period. Sometimes it's 30 days, sometimes it's 60 days, sometimes it's 6 months, depending on the complexity of the site. So, if it's a site that's a little fella and it only needs a few little checks, they might ask for a 30-day DD. If it's a site that's waiting for a zoning change, waiting for some chemical checks in the ground, then they may ask for 6 months exclusive DD, at which, when that point finishes, the seller expects the person to buy it or knock it out.
It's almost like basically it's just reworded a cooling off period. Basically, you put down a small deposit, like a cooling off for a unit is basically 5 days of DD while you maybe do a strata report or get your lawyer to check it. Where this is a lot more in depth. And you may think as an agent, well, why doesn't the agent just get that information before, or the vendor, so you can avoid the DD? Now, a reason is, one, each set of buyers, so let's talk about a development site. If you're looking to do maybe a land subdivision compared to a unit block, compared to a childcare, you all will have different requirements or information you want to know before you go into it. So an owner or an agent, we can't go do every test under the sun to qualify land. It's just, you just don't do it. It will cost too much. For example, like Mark said before, a soil test can be 5, 10, 15 grand. Now, if someone buys it who doesn't need it, it's a bit of a waste of money. And a lot of the time, a developer won't even trust your soil test. They want to do it themselves anyway. So that's why that structure is in place. It's quite normal. Where, Mark, when you compare it to a unit, if an agent or a vendor hasn't done a strata report, the buyer's like, why haven't you done that? It doesn't really have that sort of attitude or reaction in that sort of commercial development world. They're quite willing to do the work. They just need time, and it's hard.
What about an option? How's the DD different to an option?
Well, an option's usually a little bit longer. Most people do an option based on getting the actual council approval, which can be 6, 12, 18 months, where a DD...
So an option period will go for years and a DD period will go for months?
Correct. Where a DD may just be, I just want to make sure the soil's not contaminated. I'm confident doing the DA myself. I'm not going to drag it on. So DD is short term. An option agreement is long term, pretty much sees you all the way through to the council gives it approval. That would be the big difference between DD, due diligence, for a development or any purchase compared to an option agreement. Your deposit may be the same.
And probably the diligence period is like, we know we're not going to get anything definite or finite, but we just want to check shit out. But with an option, it's like we want definity and we want something finite. And if we can get that, we will pay that. So I think that's how due diligence differs itself from option. And, that's why you need that longer period. So back to due diligence, what's a property that you had due diligence on, Michael? Probably maybe 41 Warriewood Road had a due diligence period of 2 weeks after the tender had finished.
Yes.
What's a property that you think is a good example of a due diligence?
That would probably be, we're quite fortunate. There's, we had a lot of competition. So when there's a lot of competition on a property, there's probably less due diligence available because there's a lot of buyers who've possibly done developments within that area who don't need to do the due diligence because they've done it previously. But the Warriewood one had about 2 to 3 weeks, but that was more based on getting the finances in check prior to exchange. I think they did like a quick soil test. It was like a pre-soil test to a proper one. They just wanted to confirm one thing they saw visually prior to exchange, but they knew the full test could take 6 to 8 weeks, and they didn't have it because we had other buyers. But as I'm dealing with a lot of developers all the time and hearing about what they're doing with other sites, it's quite normal to be in a 2-month DD. Really, for most of it comes around the soil and the earthworks around it. I know in Warrior and liaising with council as well, because just to book into council to get in front of them is for a pre-DA is about 3 to 4 weeks, just to let them hear what you say to get their opinion. So a lot of that is based on that, around that type.
So for anyone who just tuned in, we're talking about what is a due diligence period and what it means in real estate in the marketplace, as opposed to a cooling off, as opposed to a option. Cooling off is probably more the residential short 5-day thing. The option is more, if we can get this zoning, then we will pay that price, and now give us an option period in order to try to get this done. So get going a year or two.
Now, I'll tell you what really grinds my gears. Like, obviously dealing with the commercial, I get due diligence, I understand it, I know when it's necessary. Now, when you're selling like a strata shop and someone throws out to you, I need a 30-day DD, that instantly like unqualifies you. One, it's not the right terminology for that type of purchase, and it's just not necessary. Like for that type of realm, price point type of property, to be a qualified buyer, it's like and the real thing that annoyed was for unqualified them to say you're a qualified buyer, finance approved, all this, and then you need a 30-day DD. You're not a qualified buyer, because one, that's like, it's just taking something that using a large scale negotiation into this to make it sound, I don't know, sound that you're more seasoned, but if anything, it does the quite opposite. Like you don't, DD is for those type of works on a property to buy. Now, being a good buyer don't get me wrong, you need to do your own due diligence when you're looking to buy a unit, research in the area, or a strata shop, or anything in that type of vicinity or style of property. But try and get an exclusive use for DD, like that's like telling me you've walked into a suburb, know nothing about it, you want to buy a property, but you know nothing about the area. That's just, I don't know, Mark. It sort of just was like, do you even know what you're looking for? What DD?
Well, it could be like a cliche mistake, or like a typical mistake where, someone, like sometimes you sort of got to watch your terminology, because as
True.
like, because as an agent, you don't sort of want to look like a hero or be a hero, and that sort of thing. So I think that it's like, I guess, walking into a fancy restaurant and saying, "Can I have a champagne?" And they go, "What?" You go, "Champagne." You go, "What?" And you're trying to say champagne because you've read it, but you've never said it, and you're in a fancy restaurant. Straight away, the waiter's going to go, "Fuck, this guy doesn't know what I'm talking about." So it's the same thing with property. Like, if you can get your terminology right, like I think sometimes you can look at it, sort of puts a bad taste in people's mouths. So I guess giving people that today, that terminology with how to use the word cooling off, how to use particularly what is due diligence, and then what is an option. It just makes you a bit more fluid in a negotiation or when you're looking at properties.
So how would, like, for the point of view for agents out there, myself, the buyer comes up, like, how would you sort of word it? Like a 30-day due diligence for a strata shop when they've got their, like, what I said to them I sort of said, so what information do you need to make your decision? Like, how can I help? And they're just like, they couldn't really give me an answer. It's almost like they read it in a book. We need 30-day DD. Because I was like, what do you need? Do you need recent sales? Do you need yield comparisons? Do you need cap rates? Like, what do you need? You said you got your finance approved, and like, I don't get it. So you're just gonna walk around the suburb for 30 days and just see if it looks and feels good. Like, and also then how do you pre-frame it? Like, that's what you do before you really make the offer, sort of thing. You ready, like before, a strong offer is when you put it on a contract, not make an offer and then subject to DD. It makes the owner think you haven't even looked at the property. Do your DD first.
But correct me if I'm wrong, but these are life skills. For you to be able to know how to bloody use cutlery, or for you to know how to, property terms. I think that you will reference this stuff at one time or another around a barbecue, dinner table with your kids, with your parents. I think it's handy knowing, what is, cool off, what is option period, what is DD. Important to know.
I think it could also be, could also, even when you've got, I suppose, if I sort of assume most agents wouldn't be too forthcoming with information sharing. So a lot of buyers would sort of be very skeptical, and they just need a bit of time to recoup. So in your opinion, like, but then again, should you be doing that sort of due diligence prior to putting it out there? I just think it really unqualifies the buyer. So in my view, it's fair enough. You've got to do it. You're not buying a property with your eyes closed. But but I think, as we've said in many shows previously, or episodics they're called, we've learned, any show on Facebook longer than 18 minutes is an episodic, I think that's the word. In previous episodics, there is big power in buying properties unconditional, having your army of valuers, lawyers already behind you. So when you go to that agent, the owner, you go, here's the offer. It's very strong, rather than saying cooling off DD. You're sort of making it worse. You'd probably an owner would rather hear cooling off than a 30-day DD period.
So, sorry, with DD, so it's a period where a buyer has got time to just do their research. Is DD always exclusive, or sometimes is it non-exclusive?
Well, it should be exclusive. It is a proper DD is exclusive. It's a cooling off period. Reality is, now look at cooling off, deposit paid.
So does someone pay for it? Does someone pay for a DD period?
Yes, deposit paid, goodwill, good faith. Generally, it's non-refundable. It's a good faith deposit. It can be structured in many ways, depending. But money's paid. It's exclusive. There should be a term sheet, heads of agreement paid. Now, what really frustrated me was the DD people were asking. They're not even asking for an exclusive. It's almost like they just want to hear they've got it, but there's nothing contractually bound. So it's not even worth anything. So an owner can just say, yeah, you've got it. There's your 21 DD starting now.
Like, from a buyer, and it's not really even a real commitment from the seller. It's just, yeah.
So remember, guys, if you're asking things, you got to know what you're asking, what it means. So that vendor could go, okay, you've got your 21DD, sell it to someone else. You get the shits because you've done work, but you haven't entered into any agreement. It's not binding. A proper exclusive use is binding, because if you're spending 10, 20, 30 grand on soil testing, you don't want them to sell it to someone else tomorrow. So that's a proper exclusive use. If you're not paying money and a contract's not being signed, just like a calling off, it's a nothing period. So why ask for it?
So if you do get due diligence in residential property. So if a first-time buyer is buying a one-bedroom unit, they do get time to do their research on that property, strata search, bank valuation, finance, but it's called a cooling off period. So it's termed differently.
Yes.
And that's actually in the contract already. That cooling off is already pre-written into every contract in New South Wales. So it's a 5-day cooling off that's pretty standard. Now, something that a lot of people don't know is commercial properties don't have that standard contract that standard clause in the contract is automatically waived if it's
Right.
not a residential property. And so because it's automatically waived that 5-day cooling off period, it then triggers what we're talking about today, which is a due diligence period.
You know what? I was just thinking there. Great tip to agents out there, and if you're looking to buy. Now, be transparent with what due diligence you need, and I think that will hold a bit of weight. So instead of saying, I need to do due diligence, when really you know what you need to know before it makes you comfortable to buy that property, and it may be a strata report, it may be checking with your broker, it may be a combination of both. Instead of just throwing out there a winded phrase of, I need to do my due diligence, I need 30 days, I would recommend be a lot more specific, because then if you're specific, it makes you it gives the appearance that you know what you're doing, because you know the one or two things you need to do to make the decision. For example,
it goes with anything. If you instill confidence in someone, it's better.
Yeah. So for example, two things said differently mean a big difference. Like you're going to make an offer and go, I need 21-day due diligence. The owner's probably going like, you don't know your ass from your elbow. No, that's a million things. Compared to, I need 21 days or 21 days due diligence just to get my finance approved, then I'll exchange. They virtually mean the same thing, but that just goes the owner, 21 days, I get what you need to know. I'm happy to commit to that. Great, let's do it. And then you may be able to tweak it actually to 21 days. Well, let's exchange contracts subject to finance. So by giving what you need in order to do the transaction, we can then structure a deal. The owner may say, hey, I know a great broker, or the agent, I can do it in 14 days for you, rather than just saying, need to do due diligence. Like, I think identify what you need.
And that is due diligence.
That's due diligence. That's to take morning minutes. Thank you, everybody. Anything else you want to add, Mark?
Oh, did we have that at the beginning?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a take.
That's a take. You.
See ya. Non-action. See you guys. Have a beautiful day. Hopefully it's not going to get too